warm welcome to our viewers all around the world. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. Our top stories this half hour. At least 6 people killed in Russian airstrikes hours after U.S. President put talks with Russian leader on hold. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says Gaza ceasefire still in place despite weekend violence. Plus, Cameroon's National Vote Counting Commission declares incumbent President Paul Biya as provisional winner of the election. Let's begin the world today. At least 6 people, including 2 children, have been killed in a new wave of Russian drone and missile strikes across Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that 21 others were injured in the attacks and that Moscow has not felt enough pressure over its war campaign. The strikes came just hours after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that his planned summit with Russian leader Vladimir Putin in Budapest has been put on hold, saying he did not want a wasted meeting. The Kremlin has rejected calls from both President Trump and European leaders for a ceasefire along the current front lines.
I don't want to have a wasted meeting. I don't want to have a waste of time, so I'll see what happens. But we did all of these great deals, great peace deals. They're all peace deals, agreements, solid agreements, every one of them. But this one, and I said, go to the line of battle, the battlefield lines, and you pull back and you go home, and everybody take some time off, because you got 2 countries that are killing each other. You got 2 countries that are losing 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers a week. So we'll see what happens. We haven't made a determination.
We'll bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird, to give us more information on this. Maria, great to hear from you today. What more do we know about President Trump's decision to shelve talks with the Russian president?
Yes, clearly this has been something that has been happening for quite some time now. The president has been very clear as to how he feels and what he's thinking as it relates to Russia. Obviously, there's been lots of conversation as it relates to Ukraine and Russia, and this has been something that has not necessarily gone without notice. And so I think where we're looking at is we're looking to see exactly where he will respond over the coming days. U.S. and Russia relations obviously have been of the topic of discussion since the president went into office, and says that, obviously at this time he did not want to have a wasted meeting over the plans. He obviously is looking forward. We know that he just recently went into in the peace treaty between Israel and Gaza, and and with Hamas. And so he's looking to have some real movement. And so at this time, obviously, whether or not hearing that there is any intentions for ceasefire. So that's kind of where the president's plans are. And he has no immediate plans for a meeting.
The announcement came just hours before renewed Russian strikes in Ukraine. Is there any link between the 2 events?
Well, I think that's speculation, whether or not there is a direct link between that. I think is just merely speculation at this time. And as you mentioned, the intense strikes on Ukraine that kill more than a dozen people, including even a kindergartner. And so the president has been very clear as to what his hope is. And so we'll see in the coming days whether or not there can be any movement forward, and whether or not these attacks will dissipate, and whether or not there will be time, and there will be a time for a meeting between the 2, which is very interesting to see the evolution of this relationship, which we know President Trump and President Putin were very close previously.
And the president says that he didn't want a wasted meeting. Is there any way that this could halt in the talks, could affect U.S.-Russia relations going forward?
I think this is definitely new territory for the U.S. and Russia recently. I think this could definitely put some challenge there. We know the president does not mince words. We also know the president is very clear about what his intentions are. And most importantly, he's very clear in wanting to ensure that there is potentially a ceasefire. He's called for a ceasefire for several months now, and so he's really not interested in having any meetings until there is a meeting to discuss ceasefire.
What kind of message, does this send to European leaders who've been calling for a ceasefire in Ukraine?
I think this definitely tells European leaders that the U.S. is very focused on that, and they're hopeful that there could be ceasefire in the near future, and that the U.S. is continuing to stay where they have stood. And this is not obviously new just to this current administration. Previous administrations were also calling for ceasefire in the region, and specifically also providing aid and support to Ukraine during this time.
Is there any talk of this meeting happening anytime in the future? It's just a postponement, anyway.
It's a postponement. There's not been obviously any date set. I think that we'll see what happens as a result of what the president has recently said, and whether or not that does drive any sort of further communication from the Kremlin, and specifically from Russia. And if they are able to find ways to want to discuss ceasefire in a way that the president feels will lead to potential movement forward to have ceasefire in the region, I think that we could see a meeting very soon. We know the president does not typically take a long time once decisions are made. And so that's, I think, something that is really going to depend on how Russia responds.
Yeah, thanks again. In the meantime, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says the ceasefire in Gaza is in a very good place despite violence in the Strip over the weekend. Mr. Vance was speaking during the trip to Israel as part of the Trump administration's efforts to strengthen the ceasefire. A flare-up of violence on Sunday threatened to derail the truce, but with both sides, that's Hamas and Israel, accusing each other of violations. However, the vice president has said that he had real optimism that the ceasefire would hold and that Hamas will disarm. He warned that very bad things would happen if the group did not comply. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also said that any violation by Hamas, including a failure to disarm, would allow Israel to return to war.
We've had an unmatched alliance and a partnership with the United States. That is changing the Middle East, and it's also changing the world. It creates opportunities not only for security, but for the expansion of peace, which we're working on very, very diligently. And it's just unmatched. I've been here a few years. I've been through several administrations. I welcome the partnership and the assistance we've had, but there's never been anything like that. And President Trump said that. It's like a partnership that's never happened before. Well, that includes a closed circle, both on our side and on the American side.
As the Prime Minister said, these are days of destiny, and we're very excited to sit down and work together on the Gaza peace plan. We have a very, very tough task ahead of us, which is to disarm Hamas, but rebuild Gaza to make life better for the people in Gaza, but also to ensure that Hamas is no longer a threat to our friends in Israel. That's not easy. I think the Prime Minister knows that as well as anybody, but it's something that we're committed to in the Trump administration. And I think that we've, even in the past 24 hours, had a lot of good conversations with our friends in the Israeli government, but also, frankly, with our friends in the Arab world who are stepping up and volunteering to play a very positive role in this. So we're going to keep working at it. I didn't know what to expect, honestly. I know the president was here a week ago to welcome the hostages home and actually sign the deal a week into it. There's a lot of work to do, but I feel very optimistic about where we are. So thank you for the partnership.
Meanwhile, dozens of pro-Palestine activists gathered outside the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., calling on Congress to end military aid to Israel and condemning continued Israeli strikes on Gaza despite the ceasefire. Executive Director of the American Muslims for Palestine, Dr. Osma Abu Ershaid, said that the Congress is not serving the American people. The rally comes after President Trump and Vice President Vance hailed the ceasefire despite ongoing Israeli strikes on Gaza.
This Congress is not serving the American people. This Congress is dysfunctional when it comes to our national interest, when it comes to the interest of their own constituents. But this Congress comes together when it's about Israel, when it's about giving more military aid to Israel. So far in the past 2 years, we have given a minimum of $30 billion to Israel. We have provided all of the weapons. We have provided the political cover. We have provided the diplomatic cover for Israel to continue to commit its crimes. But when it comes to serving America and Americans, when it comes to serving humanity and saving human lives, this Congress is completely absent.
I can't feel proud of looking at that dome and thinking how unrepresentative our government is of the will and the desires of the American people who have seen through the propaganda and now are much more sympathetic towards the Palestinians than they are to Israel, who don't want to spend any more of our tax dollars going to Israel. So you have to ask, what kind of democracy do we have that we're trying to impose all over the world when the will of the people is so violated by the institutions that are supposed to represent us? And I can't help looking at this dome here without thinking of the lobby groups like AIPAC, the groups like Christians United for Israel, fanatical Zionists that say that God says that we should be destroying the lives of Palestinians. What kind of God is that? And the AIPAC group. I am a Jewish American, and it hurts me so much to know that so many of the people in AIPAC say they are doing it for the safety of the Jews. When this is not for the safety of the Jews, I certainly feel less safe in these last 2 years of genocide than I felt before that. And so when I look around at you, I see the real America here that's trying to bridge this gap between what we, the American people, want and what our government is doing.
In the meantime, the ceasefire is allowing UN agencies reach more people with life-saving food, even as humanitarians warn that the greater access is needed to contain the spread of famine. The World Food Programme says it has brought in more than 6,700 metric tons of food since the ceasefire began on October 11, enough for nearly 500,000 people, but just for 2 weeks. WFP spokesperson Abir Etafa told reporters in Geneva that daily deliveries now average around 750 tons, still well below the target of 2,000 tons a day.
So far, we've had over 6,700 tons of food. That's enough for close to 500,000 people for 2 weeks. Daily deliveries continue, and they are now averaging around 750 tons. That's much better than what we had before the ceasefire, but it's still well below our target, which is around 2,000 tons every day. Severe amount of destruction makes it, almost impossible to get to this goal of 2,000 tons unless you are able to utilize all crossing points. We haven't had large-scale convoys into the Gaza city or to the north of Gaza. We've cleared the roads at scale into the north, but we need these crossings to open so that we're able to get large-scale convoys. The response has been really overwhelming. People are showing up in large numbers, grateful for the efficiency of the delivery of food assistance, as well as the dignified way of people standing in line, quickly getting their food rations, and especially impacting the most vulnerable, the women, female-headed households, the elderly. People are hopeful. There is cautious optimism, but the food that they are receiving, they eat part of it and they ration and keep some of the supplies for emergency because they are not very confident how long the ceasefire will last and what will happen next.
And coming up after the break. Louvre Museum opens in Paris after a jewel heist in daybreak. Welcome back. The National Vote Counting Commission has declared incumbent President Paul Biya the provisional winner of the October 12 election. The commission says President Biya secured just over 53% of the vote, defeating his main rival, Issa Chiroma Bakri, who received 35%. However, the results are being disputed by many, including the opposition candidate. President Biya, reportedly the world's oldest head of state, was challenged by 9 candidates. With this win, he secures an 8th executive term in office. The next election is scheduled for 2032, which means he will be nearly 100 years old at the time. The official final results of the Cameroonian presidential election are expected to be announced by the Constitutional Council on or before October 27, 2025. Elsewhere, Germany is in the middle of a heated immigration debate. Chancellor Friedrich Merz's latest remarks have sparked criticism and raised tough questions about who belongs and who doesn't. For more, let's turn to DW correspondent Chiponda Chimbelu in Berlin for us. Chiponda, great to see you today. What triggered this latest controversy?
It started last week. Now, Chancellor Merz spoke of problems in Germany's cityscapes and linked them to immigration, and that is what started all of this. Now, opposition parties and even some of the Chancellor's fellow Christian Democrats have criticized him for linking problems in German cities to immigration. The Greens and the Left Party have demanded that Merz apologize for what they call racist and discriminatory remarks. But the German Chancellor doubled down on his cityscape statement on Monday. Now, since the weekend, we have seen protests in German cities, and many ordinary people have been putting up critical posts on social media asking whether they are also the part of the problematic cityscapes that the German Chancellor was speaking of.
What effect is this discussion having on German society?
Well, one thing is sure, it's definitely not going to make Germany more attractive for immigrants. 1 in 4 immigrants who's living here has been thinking about leaving the country, and that is according to a study that was published in the summer by the German Institute for Employment Research. And it was highly skilled workers, especially those in IT and finance, who are most likely to have concrete plans to leave Germany. Now, one of the main reasons was dissatisfaction with the political situation in the country. Experts say that the shift in immigration rhetoric and the rise in the far-right AfD's popularity are key factors. And Germany may also be becoming less attractive for immigrants from other EU countries as well. Last year marked the first time since 2008 that more EU citizens left Germany than moved here.
And how crucial is immigration for Germany's economy? This one that you just commented that people want to leave.
Very crucial. And that is because baby boomers are retiring in record numbers. And then, of course, countries like Poland, which have been a major source of immigrants, are also growing faster economically than Germany, making them, of course, more attractive for their own citizens. So if we do see less EU citizens moving to Germany in the coming years, then Germany will have to rely even more on immigrants from outside Europe, from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And that is also why there are concerns about the Chancellor's latest rhetoric. Now, in the health sector alone, nearly every 5th nurse is from abroad. And over the last 15 years, we have seen the number of foreign workers in Germany rise by 4 million. And of course, that is not counting those who have become German citizens. So, of course, Germany's labor market is highly dependent on immigrants.
Chiponda, thanks again. Let's move along. Thick grey smog has engulfed New Delhi following Diwali celebrations on Tuesday. The capital is covered in dense haze as commuters drive through low visibility near Delhi Gate, while anti-smog trucks spray water along the road. Several locals complain of a burning sensation in the eyes and dryness when breathing. Authorities introduced stage 2 of the graded action response plan, reporting air quality in the very poor category, with 35 out of 38 monitoring stations showing levels in the red zone. The Delhi government has announced plans for artificial rainfall through cloud seeding later this week to help curb pollution levels. The Louvre Museum in Paris has reopened 3 days after jewelry worth 88 million euros was stolen in a brazen daylight robbery. Visitors were welcomed back from 9 a.m. local time today, but the museum confirmed that the Apollo Gallery, where the heist took place, remains closed. Thieves armed with power tools took less than 8 minutes to break into the world's most visited museum and escape on scooters on Sunday morning. They have not yet been caught. President Emmanuel Macron has urged ministers to speed up the security upgrades at the museum as it reopens to the public. Well, mosquitoes have been discovered in Iceland for the first time after the country experienced record-breaking heat this spring. Local media reports that insect enthusiast Björn Hjaltason spotted the mosquitoes several nights last week while using wine-soaked ropes to observe moths. He found 2 female mosquitoes and 1 male, later confirmed to be the Coliceta annulata species, one of the few that can survive harsh winters. Iceland was one of only 2 mosquito-free regions in the world, alongside Antarctica. The discovery ends the country's long-standing mosquito-free status and has raised questions about the impact of climate change in Arctic ecosystems. And that's the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.